So I'm a board certified psychiatrist, and it's my mission to help PMHNPs practice psychiatry with confidence. And in this video, we're going to be covering how exactly SSRIs were built. And if you understand this, then you'll know exactly how to choose the right SSRI for each patient because you understand their history and where they came from. So, have you ever wondered why there's so many SSRIs? Prozac, Zoloft, Lexapro, Paxil, Luvox. Like, why are there so many in this one class? The reason is because each one evolved to solve a series of problems that the previous one had. And so here I'm going to walk you through the history of that so that way you understand each SSRI's place, unique spot that it has in history, and then its unique spot that it will have with patient care. So to set the scene, think about like in prior to the 1950s, there was no medication, nothing for mood problems. And so people undiagnosed depression or anxiety problems were just thought, okay, it's just a mental thing. It was swept under the rug, disregarded. Mental health diagnoses weren't really a thing then. And so people were struggling with all sorts of mental health symptoms, but weren't able to get the treatment for it, or rather, weren't even able to express and identify what exactly it was that they were feeling. And then in the 1950s, so in the 1950s and 60s, TCAs and MAOIs came out. And this became a miracle when now all of a sudden we have these medications that can target mood, that can target stress, that can target sleep, that can target anxiety, that can target motivation. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. And this led to a whole influx of medication production during this period in these two classes, the TCAs and the MAOIs. However, the problem that was happening was that these medications had side effects. So they had side effects of sedation, they had nausea, vomiting, they were very dangerous in overdose. MAOIs needed a very specific diet. And so they became very limiting in that regard. And it also became hard for practitioners to prescribe them because it was hard to manage a lot of these side effects. Keep in mind, imagine if you're a PCP, trying to use these complex medications is very difficult, especially when you don't know what kind of intense, crazy side effect you're going to expect. And so fast forward about 20, 25 years, and the medication called fluoxetine or Prozac came out. And the goal of this medication was basically trying to solve some of those side effect problems that the TCAs and MAOI had, the dangerousness and overdose, some of the side effects, a lot of the sedating effect. And it became wildly successful. When Prozac came out, there was headlines like, "This is a wonder drug," "Revolution in a capsule." Books, there was a book called Prozac Nation that was written about a patient's mental health journey that exploded. It became a movie as well. And Prozac was very highly regarded at that time because it was easy to dose, which made it accessible for PCPs. It was long lasting. It was energizing, which is super helpful with depression. And it was safe in overdose. So it came out and boom, had all these advantages that this TCAs and MAOIs did not. But Prozac, of course, as we know, has its problems. So the activation can be too much. It can cause anxiety. It still had side effects like nausea and vomiting. The activation can cause insomnia. It's also very long lasting. And so it can be really hard for a patient to get off of it. Basically, it can take them a while to get off of it. They can't just stop it and then it's out of their system. And it has CYP interactions, meaning that it interacted with some other medications too, and they were still learning about all of this. But that doesn't stop the manic craze that Prozac created. And so this led drug companies to really start investing heavily into SSRI development. And so in This led to, in 1991, the release of sertraline, or Zoloft. And sertraline was touted as the balanced SSRI, basically dampening down the activating effects of Prozac. So it's not as activating as Prozac. Its length, it doesn't last nearly as long as Prozac, so it's easier for patients can come off of it quicker. It doesn't have the CYP interactions to the same degree that fluoxetine Prozac does. And the dosing is very flexible too. Because it's not as activating, it can be used for anxiety and PTSD. It was showing some efficacy for that. And so overall, Zoloft was a big step in comparison to Prozac, fluoxetine, for those benefits and being marketed as a balanced SSRI. And because of this, it became a workhorse SSRI that many people, especially PCPs, because that's where the mass majority of mental health medications are prescribed, were using. But there were still some problems with sertraline. Obviously, it still had some of the same side effects, like nausea, vomiting, GI side effects. Diarrhea was a big one, but it was also activating too. Not as much as fluoxetine, but still activating. And so this did have some difficulty, especially with insomnia. And then in 1992, then comes along paroxetine, or Paxil. And so Paxil's claim to fame was that it was more sedating. And so this helped with anxiety and it helped with insomnia, and especially insomnia caused by anxiety at night. So that was a huge touted benefit of Paxil. Dose this once at night, and you can knock out those two birds with one stone. And also marketed for panic disorder as well, too. However, as we came to later find out, the problems with Paxil were its anticholinergic side effects and the withdrawal, especially coming off of Paxil because of its short half-life, are a lot. And so that led it to lose favor relatively quickly. But that was one of the main ways that it still marketed itself, and still does, is its PTSD, FDA designation, and then helping with insomnia and anxiety at night. And now with all of these medications, okay, so now we're targeting depression and anxiety, but nothing is really targeting OCD. That was still an area of the marketplace that could be targeted and could be further expanded on. And so in 1993, this is when fluvoxamine, or Luvox, came into the market. And so the whole idea behind Luvox was that, okay, this is the medication for OCD. It's got a high affinity for the serotonin transporter, and it tends to be more serotonergic. And so because of this, they were successfully able to obtain an FDA approval for OCD. And that's how it was able to stand out, because now you can see the marketplace is getting crowded for these SSRIs, and it needed its own way to stand out, and that's how it did it. Of course, it still had some of the same side effects as some of the other SSRIs. There's still some sedation. There's the CYP interactions with Luvox as well too, so that's a downside there. And its use has gotten narrower and narrower to mainly prescribers today prescribe it for OCD and not as much for anxiety, depression, panic disorder, or PTSD. So fast forward to 1998, these SSRIs, the problem that they're having is they're still having side effects. So maybe not as much as the TCAs or the MAOIs, but side effects are still being seen. And the drug companies might not advertise it as much, but real world clinicians were still seeing that. And so that left another gap in the marketplace. And so in 1998, this is when citalopram came out, or Celexa. And the whole idea behind citalopram was that it was the clean SSRI. Basically, it served the same functions as the other SSRIs, but it did not have the same amount of side effects as the other ones. It didn't have the side effects. It had less CYP interactions compared to, let's say, Luvox and Prozac, and its dosing was very easy too. less intervals. So just 10, 20, 30, 40. The problem that citalopram ran into, especially once more data was gathered on it, was its QT prolongation. Going to high doses was limited by the amount of QT prolongation that it caused. And so there were heart risks, right? That which gets into TCA territory. And so that's what limited its success from being the go-to SSRI. And so then fast forward to 2002, where they recognized that they had potential in this. And so then came out escitalopram or Lexapro. And so Lexapro was marketed as the refined Celexa, where basically escitalopram, this is the S enantiomer of citalopram. So it's just the active form of it. And so that's why its dosing is halved. So the starting dose for citalopram is like 10 milligrams, goes to 40, whereas Lexapro starting dose is 5 milligrams, goes to 20. And it's because it's just using the active enantiomer of the molecule, the S enantiomer, and not the inactive one. So then this was marketed, okay, this is the clean SSRI, but it's now the more potent one too. And so because it's just using the pure active molecule, the inactive molecule can't cause any side effects. And so this is going to have less side effects. And yeah, anecdotally, Lexapro does tend to have less side effects compared to some of the other SSRIs. Of course, it still has side effects and is not as perfect as the company would like to market, but that's how it was created. And this is why Lexapro is the most common SSRI that I've seen prescribed, both in psychiatric practice and by primary care practice, which is the vast majority of antidepressants are prescribed, is because of that lesser side effect. And that's why I wanted to really highlight this so you can understand how each antidepressant has developed and how each one developed to address some of the problems before it. Obviously, none of them are perfect. And now, right now in 2026, we're coming to realize even more problems with the SSRIs, like withdrawal effects, protracted withdrawal, and like PSSD and like the sexual dysfunction. But understanding this helps you understand each SSRI's unique use case, and also just gives an appreciation for how the field, like where the field has evolved, when it evolved. And so keep in mind, this one was in 2002. So we still have a long way to go now in 2026, as of this recording, into antidepressant treatment. So it makes me excited for what the future will bring to you too. But I want you to see this so that way you can remember this, understand this, and so you can be able to use this to help guide your patient care. So I hope that this is helpful. If you want to learn how to really utilize these medications with real life patients, best place to do that is in our PMHNP Academy, where I mentor PMHNP students every day with their clinical cases and basically download all my knowledge from psychiatric residency and fellowship to you. So that way you don't have to be struggling in the clinic. And yeah, there's going to be a video linked at the end of this. So definitely watch that, and I'll see you there.